Marsh, take it away.
So the last year, as everybody alive knows, we've been fighting with this terrible pandemic, and our hats have really been off to all of you in our school system because you've had a tremendous level of responsibility. We're not telling you anything, but we just really remember the terrible responsibilities and wonderful responsibilities you've been taking to provide for our children. It's just been talking with teachers, we know they're putting out at an amazing level, preparing lessons, learning how to teach online from moment to moment, not knowing whether they have half their students online or in person. And then there are you all who are providing leadership, who are trying to keep on top of all that's going on, figure out what to do and make sure children are well fed and they're hopefully learning a little something. Our hats are just off to all of you, and we want to thank the three of you who represent our school system for your leadership and really hard work in caring for our children and our future. So we just give you a hand of appreciation.
Thank you.
At the same time, we've been watching the world around us, and the death of George Floyd and all of the events that have happened after that have really made us all aware of how off the track we've been. And as I'm learning this year from watching documentaries on American history and reading articles, and all of us are reading books like Caste, and so you want to talk about race, we're learning that there was a whole history of America that we were totally ignorant about. And we want our children to have that history so that they get the whole truth. And we're hoping for leaders in our schools that will provide models of people of color for children to look up to. And we're looking to make sure everybody in our community feels welcomed and valued. And so we're particularly excited that you all who are our leaders in our school system are very concerned about this and are fast at work. And you've got even some more news of steps you're taking. And we just want to appreciate you and look forward to learning about all these things that are happening in our school district and meeting a new friend. So thanks to Laura, who's been working on this, getting us together for the last 3 months. And thank you, Jim. You're going to lead us off. And Jim Culkeen is our superintendent of the Southwest Supervisory Union District. We really appreciate having you and our secret new guest with us here today.
All right. Well, thank you for having us, and thank you for recognizing the difficult challenge this past school year. It's unbelievable that I sit here and say that it's almost been a year. My own personal journey, I don't know if you noticed, I stopped cutting my hair back in February. Again, I'm not going to cut until I don't know when I thought I was going to get a cut, but the shop that I went to closed, and when it reopened, I still didn't go back. And then I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to let it go. So March 17th is our 1 year that we actually went into shutdown, and I had said I was going to cut it at the 1 year point. And now it remains to be seen whether I will. But just tremendous work by our partners, the Abbey Group, who's kept our students fed, as you said, and Do For Transportation, who has helped get all those meals distributed, and how teachers, administrators were able to. It's not ideal, and I will tell you that what we will be announcing tomorrow is that we're 2 weeks away from going back to what we call our phase 3, which will be, our goal is 100% of the students in school 4 days a week. So that would be starting 2 weeks from Monday. That will be there. We think we can do it. Possibly not at the high school because the physical distancing requirements are 6 feet still at the middle school and high school, 3 feet in the middle. And transportation is a challenge because of how few students we can put on there. But we think we got a lot of as long as everyone stays healthy and we don't have another resurgence, I think we're going to get there. So, but we're here today to talk about equity. And for me, my journey, I've always considered myself a pretty liberal-minded person, but no one, we're always learning, right? So for my journey in the study of equality, I would say really began 3 years ago after a series of parent meetings at our middle school, where I was seeing the challenges that some parents were feeling and listening to them express their frustrations with the school system. So I made it a personal journey for me. When I wrote my goals to present to the supervisory board that year, I included an equity goal for me personally, but my goals then by virtue become goals of the district. So those goals were approved by the supervisory board for me. And that included taking a course. And I took a course through a collaborative in Northampton, Massachusetts, and met a wonderful professor named Elizabeth Miller. And the project that I had during that course, because it was geared towards administrators, was so for me to do a presentation to the school board for including an equity coordinator position in our school district. So that's kind of where it started. In that, during the first year that I got it approved, it was for a stipend, and we were going to stipend someone to be the equity coordinator. We never received any applicants for that position. It just, what it offered to pay probably wasn't enticing enough, and what the expectations were for that position. So then we rewrote it in the following year because, in the public budget process, we don't move often as quickly as we would like to. So in year 2 of the budget process, because I had already had the line item for the stipend position, I was able to get it increased, and it survived budget runs to make it a school year position. We actually did hold interviews, did have applicants, but it was not really what we wanted. It was because probably of how low of a salary it was and where it was in the organizational chart and whether it could have been an effective position. That's when the assistant superintendent stepped in and was able to make it part of a grant proposal that was accepted by the state of Vermont. So we were able to offer more money and make it a year-round position. And that's where the person I'll introduce in a minute comes in. But I do want to talk about my study with equity. We're not just talking about racial equity. The course I took was all forms of equity and biases, including gender equity, which we had Elizabeth Miller, the professor that I studied with, then came and presented opening day remarks to all our staff. And then she also then, through Melissa Senecal, our director of curriculum instruction, then she offered a course for our teachers who are interested to take a course. We hope that those type of efforts will continue. We have Elizabeth Miller on a consultant basis to the school district because as talented as the person you're going to meet in a minute is, no one person has all the answers. So Elizabeth Miller has worked as a consultant to our principals, particularly along gender issues with students that may be transitioning. And that's a whole new world for some of our principals. So it's a resource that they can reach out to and use as they need it. And the principals have expressed gratitude that resource is there. So we're committed as a district to keep that along with Jonathan. So I think we've made some great strides, but no organization should rest ever where they are, and you always move forward. And so part of this grant that paid for this position, I'm going to turn briefly to Assistant Superintendent Laura Boudreau about the Equity Committee and their meetings and their role in the supervisory union.
Thank you. So again, thanks for having us, and I'm glad that we're able to share today. And as Mr. Culkeen said, as this was part of his goal, it was an honor then to help make this happen and come alive in our district. The state of Vermont, the Agency of Education, offered an equity literacy grant, which we applied for a few years ago. And actually was really kind of cool because we did it in collaboration with 2 other school districts. We were partnered with 2 other school districts from Northern Vermont. And so we had the grant together. And it was nice to be able to learn more about what was happening through the lens of other communities in our state. As an outcome of that grant, it was also an expectation. It had us form a community committee, which still meets. Right now, it holds at 25 members of students, staff, parents and community members. We do have 4 high school students that are members of that particular committee. We have a continuous improvement plan, so we make sure that we're working towards our goal of safe and healthy schools. So it's nice to have a target. Part of the work, we want to be able to collect data, and this is a work in progress. So part of the grant, they provided a survey for us to give to families, students, and staff at the beginning to do an initial baseline. We used that data to then make some initial action steps, which has been around some initial bias training for our staff, just the beginning steps, but we've made sure that all staff have gone through an initial level over the course of 2 years. And then we have goals that were set around requests from staff, and they were really honest about what they thought they needed. They're looking for tools to help communicate, to navigate conversations, difficult conversations with students. They're looking, part of the work that our Director of Curriculum Instruction Assessment and our special guest will be doing together is looking at the curriculum and the resources that we use as well. So those are all our goals. And so that group, very diverse group, comes together 5 times a year and acts as a sounding board. And now I'll turn it back over to Mr. Culkeen.
Thank you, Laura. And I also should mention another partner in this has been Vermont NEA, the Teachers Association, who has brought a round of implicit bias training to all our teachers, and they're committed to this also. So I imagine that person I am now going to introduce will also be working with them. So Jonathan is going to give his own biography to you. He's been instructed to do that, and then talk about what he has done. When I bring staff on administrators, I have everyone, and I did one myself, create an entry plan. So his first task for us was to create his entry plan of what his goals would be, including short-term, just a little over a month. And he's going to talk to you about what his entry plan was, what he accomplished in his first month, and what he's learned and hopes to go. So with that, I'm going to introduce you. I already told you he's originally from Baltimore, Jonathan Phipps. So, I hired him even though he wasn't a Red Sox fan. So welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. And I always have to rub this in now, just because it's what it is. As mentioned earlier, my name is Jonathan Phipps. I am the newly hired equity coordinator. I've been in this position for a month, a little bit over, like a day or two over a month now, officially. Excited. I feel like the work that I will be doing is highly necessary. Give you a brief rundown, as it's already been said. My job is basically to cater to and communicate the needs of communities of color, be them LGBT communities, communities with disabilities, anybody who's adversely affected by a dynamic that doesn't necessarily benefit them in education, and addressing these issues and making them that, in the future, we hopefully no longer have those issues, and that everybody in the school district, be them student, teacher, parents, benefits from a more equitable environment. So that's like the official part. Like, I am from Baltimore, Maryland, and before everybody gets confused about why somebody who's from Baltimore has a Yankees mug and not an Orioles mug, it's because like my parents were native New Yorkers. I technically was born in New York City. We just moved around a lot, and we decided to settle outside of Baltimore for we'll say employment reasons, and then they'll go with that. So like, outside of that, like, an interesting fact about me is like I have lived in a multitude of places. I am what you would call horribly well traveled. I lived in Australia for 4 years. Yes, I have pet a kangaroo. Before anybody asks, it does occur. Interesting side note, I kind of bring up to people, there's a good reason why I would never pet a koala. You don't believe me? Just Google koala eye infection and you will see why. And you're not supposed to. If anybody who's been to Australia knows exactly what I'm talking about, then I'm not going to say it here because it's not something that you really want to know. So my work life, I was in Baltimore City, a social studies teacher for Baltimore City Public Schools at an alternative school. I did that for a few years. I dealt with the challenges that naturally arise in a city that is strapped for cash and strapped for resources, and has quite a lot of equity related issues pertaining to it. That's something that, like, I feel helps me out in my understanding. I also I'll be blunt with it. I was raised Black in America, so I'm also very well aware of, like, the natural systemic issues that are applicable regardless of where you are in this country. Sadly, that still apply. Before that, I actually worked in politics for a good portion of my life, and I was an activist. So I bring that framework of mine to, like, how we approach these sort of issues and how we can, better meet them. I feel like, I'm hoping, like, I'm a man of hope, that, like, my outlook could actually address these in the way that they need to be. So there's that. So I'm going to get right into simply, like, my action plan, because I feel like it's really, I do have an action plan. We do have a plan on how we want to address this, address a lot of the things. I break it down into 3 separate parts. And the first part, like I was just saying, and I'll briefly go into them. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, or if you don't want to ask me in this venue, I did link under the chat my contact details. Feel free to blow up my email, my phone. I will not answer right now because I'm not in the office. I'm working from home today, but I will check the voicemail and get your number. So that's that. The first part of my plan is, it's simply communication and outreach. I feel like for us to address the issues that we need to reach out to all affected people in our community, be them students, teachers, parents, nonprofits, local organizations such as yourself. The point is, like, to address these issues, we need to communicate. We need the community on our side, and we need to have communication and draw from those resources of the community to help us move forward. Like Jim adequately put the best thing. I don't have all the answers. If I did, I would probably be sitting in a cushy office somewhere in Washington, D.C. or New York City in the United Nations right now. I am not there, okay? As such, I will say this, I am augmented, and it will help me if I have the community to have a dialogue between us, if there's any resources or anything you feel could actually help benefit our goal. Our goal is to make the school system more equitable for all. So that's the first part, communication and outreach, making sure we're continually reaching out to the community, we're hearing back from the community, responding, and we establish a collaborative environment. I want to use that C word quite a lot, collaborative. Second thing is training. I call it training and infrastructure. Obviously, like, to deal with issues of equity, we need to make sure that all of our staff and all of the people that fall under our purview are not only know what the issues are, but how to encounter them, or how to, allay them. And that's something that, like, I feel like we are in the process of investigating and doing right now, providing the training so that, like, all of our staff, and all of our students, even hopefully in the long run, will be able to understand, hey, these are where our shortcomings are, or this is where my personal shortcoming is. Maybe we can alleviate that and create a more and foster a better environment for all. So that's, like, a big part of that. The training part, the infrastructure part, that's simply building up some mechanisms that, help us better deal with issues of equity, like, have advisory committees, having school infrastructure that can, properly address issues and things like that. And finally, the third part of my entry plan is setting up a system of accountability and tracking. No matter what infrastructure we set up, no matter what training we have, it means nothing if we're not accountable to it and we don't necessarily track our progress. Funnily, this one actually ties in with the first goal, because we won't know of our account, we won't know how we're doing unless we hear back from community members from all affected parties. So, like, these 3 goals, they're interchangeable, and they're not like, it's not any one of these goals is like, it's not like I'm first doing this, I'm first doing that, I'm first doing this. They're all being done in congruency because they all are equally as important. This whole first month, I've been reaching out to community members and, like, basically set up 90-minute interviews. It's very high emotional labor. I'll give it that. Not higher than I thought, but I heard their concerns and I heard, like, what they're going through. That's pretty much been my first month right now, just reaching out to anybody. And likewise, if you guys feel like you have something you want to share with me, please, again, give me a call, send me an email. I will set up a Zoom meeting and we can go through, and, like, I will go through the whole interview with you and we can hear your concerns and hopefully we can move forward with them. And, like, so that's been my first month. Right now, my next goal that I'm immediately putting forward is, like, I will start at that. I'm not going to disclose which schools, or, like, at 2 schools, I do want to put forth, like, what I'm calling equity representatives, which is basically a body from the school that has that will represent affected demographics. Hopefully, the idea is I will be in constant communication with these people, and they will also have certain responsibilities at that school that hopefully will help us avoid or alleviate certain issues. So that's going to be like a work in progress. How we're going to come out with or how we're going to decide who is on these supervisors, we're still hammering that through. But this is something that I do feel needs to be put into place, and it's on the way. So that's like a brief another interesting fact that I did neglect to mention is that, I'm sure if he was here, he would be giving me nothing but screaming right now. I do have a 2-year-old son, a 2.5-year-old son. He's actually a big motivator for me to do this work, because again, looking into my 2.5-year-old son, I immediately reminded of things that I may have gone through when I was a kid. I would like for him to eventually move up to a place like Bennington when we buy a house, hopefully. And then I can know for a fact that him being in the school system, those issues are taken care of. He won't have to go through a lot of the things I went through. And that's an important feeling, like as a parent. And I don't know if there's no way I can convey that to enough people. Like that's my primary motivator. Some people think that's a selfish motivator. Yeah, somewhat is. But also that has a carry-on effect, because if I feel that way, other people feel that way. And they shouldn't, that's something that I feel is that's just the way I think it should be like. So if you have any questions, I'm all here. And any comments, concerns?
Feel free to chime in with questions and unmute yourself, please. Marsh, I know you had a question, so yeah, feel free to.
I have lots of questions, but I'll try to restrain myself just one at a time. So one of the things that I'm aware of, and Jim, I really appreciate your sharing your story of awakening and learning more and wanting to learn more, is the curriculum. And just being aware of how the so-called history that I grew up with was certainly not the whole truth, and missed a huge swath of what has been going on in the last centuries, and wondering how is that part of your calling to work on the curriculum, or is that Jim?
Well, let me say this. My own children were all required to read People's History of the United States. So
that book.
but and I always told them that's not necessarily the correct story, and what you're reading in school is not always correct. It's somewhere in between, and you have to get to your own spot, but in other words, always read as many resources as possible. So we have a director of curriculum instruction, Melissa Senecal, who some of you may know, and she is working with Jonathan. I think they've already developed a great relationship, and Jonathan, I think I'll let you talk about how you're working with her on curriculum.
So curriculum is one of the places that we will be looking into. In fact, we already are for the most part. Like Jim raised a very good point. History is, I like to see, as a former history teacher, history is always to a degree evolving. We're learning more, we're understanding more, we're realizing how history affected different parties more. And as such, I feel like that's eventually always reflected into our history classes. Curriculum will always adapt and to meet the needs of the time. And I think like with in terms of equity, that is something that we are looking into. I don't want to go too much into detail because there's certain things that we already have in motion in this that I don't necessarily know for a fact if it's okay to be public knowledge. I'm looking at you, Jim.
Are you talking about the one thing that is okay to say is, so part of our work is actually a curriculum audit, and the goal, and it's actually, I can even give you a little bit of the language. It's to ensure students see representation of themselves in the resources in the curriculum, and so we are working on. So that is part of our summer work this summer, particularly with the English and social studies curriculum teams.
We're working with the advisor and a actual group and a corporation that is actually helping us with this. I don't know if I should say the name or not, so I'm not going to, because I don't want to put anything on blast like that. I really don't like. But we are working with specialists in that field. That's actually it's literally already locked in for the summer, and I think we're just waiting on the final date for the final advisory time. That's probably going to happen within the next, I'm guessing, week or so. So but that is a very high focus area for us right now.
First, let me just say welcome, Jonathan. And I don't think it's selfish that you have a 2-year-old and you want the best future for him. I think that's investment, right? You're a stakeholder. So I supervise family services at Head Start, and we're of course public school pre-K partners. So I'm interested in the family piece of this. How, I understand you're starting with community and with teachers and staff, but are there long-term plans for, work to be done with families?
I will give you my personal long-term plans. And this is basically, right now I'm focused on year 1. I'll give you my 5-year plan mentality. So when I worked in Baltimore City public schools, I actually worked at an alternative school. And I'm not often when I say alternative school, it depends on where you're from. That can mean one of different things. Alternative school in Baltimore City, it's kind of like a school with youth with behavioral problems, attendance problems, challenges. A myriad of a number of things that may actually interfere with their learning. One of our responsibilities as a teacher, because we had an extra challenging environment, is that we did active youth outreach. So what that would look like is okay, I have I'll give you an example. I had a class docket of 30 or 40 kids for a certain class. Naturally, at an alternative school, we only had an attendance rate for that class. I'd say if I got 25% of those kids in class at any given time, I'm doing reasonably well. I was good at getting 30. The way we did that is honestly, the social studies team, which I was part of, we had the brilliant idea of taking a day off essentially of work and knocking on doors, basically saying, hey, we see you. Why aren't you? You've only been in my class for a day of the past week. What's going on? Do you want to pass? And that sort of level of involvement and outreach. Now, that takes a lot of resource and a lot of time, and that's something that we have to figure out along as we go. We're not going to be able to implement such a measure in the first year. There's no plausible way I can foresee of doing that. Within I operate in 5-year plans. I would love to have something analogous to that, or if that would be ideal for me, because then it's actually active community outreach, interaction with the community. You don't know what those families are going through unless, guess what, you're talking to them. Even if it's over a pizza in the living room, or even if it says the kid's running away from you because he sees you coming down the alleyway, being oh crud, it's Mr. Phipps, what do I do? One of those two ways, I think that it should happen, because that way you understand what challenges you're dealing with and how you can best address them. So yes, that is actually on my docket. Grace, right?
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask more than one question? Is that okay?
As long as it's not going to take 30.
I have 40, but I can give you 3. First of all, Jonathan, you said your contact information was in the chat, but I don't see it. Could you just
Sure thing.
Second, this is thank God you guys are doing this. This is so long overdue. I wish it had been available for my kids 20 years ago. Yeah. I really do, because that, especially high school, as Catherine knows, had a huge impact on their life trajectories, unfortunately. My question is, a lot of times when we look at equity curriculum, we look at implementing it in older grades. Right now, we are trying to get Head Start to introduce it now. So we're talking 3-4-year-olds, actually younger than that, but 3-4-year-olds is what we're thinking going into kindergarten. Are you also focused on teaching, introducing a curriculum, equity curriculum in younger grades, kindergarten, first grade?
I will tell you what my effort, in my first month, I will tell you what my efforts have been. So with working with the Head Start, I actually have worked with the early education people. In fact, we have had what was it? It was Monday. Yeah, it was Monday. So it was Monday, we actually had our first meeting where we're trying to offer some degree of training and expansive of knowledge towards the early education community that we have at SVSU. And that's basically us trying to, I'll just outline what we did over there. Where it's going to be a 3-part lesson where we're trying, the first part was understanding your own identity and how your own identity impacts the world and how you impact the world with your identity. So that was us trying to get all of our staff and staff members in the early education area to understand how their identity could impact themselves, and let alone the kids that they are, instructing. So we are working with early education. my focus right now, I will admit, is like that's there. I will say that's a side project right now with me, but it's still a project that I'm undertaking. So like that will be like 40. Like there's
But
only
it
one of
is,
me right
it
now.
is an overarching philosophy, not just for this curriculum, for all curriculum. Just like if we wait till they're in middle school and high school, so much of it is undoing or remediation, as opposed to whether it's reading, whether it's equity. We don't devote enough resources to our younger students, and that is has to be our drive and push. But I will point out, he's been here a month, so
Yes,
and
1 month.
that is gonna come with him working with, particularly Melissa Senecal and offering education and training, professional learning for our staff, that then basically train the trainer so that they can bring it back into their curriculum. But your point is well made, and it's a deep belief of mine. We spend so much on, and I'm not putting out what we do with the middle school and high school, but I use this as an example of what we spend on after school activities at the high school and middle school for sports, clubs, coaches, all great stuff. It's not equal. It's not equal of what we spend for after school activities or extended day activities for our younger students. And that's when it could have the most impact, including equity.
Okay, my other question was actually for Laura, a two-part question, sorry. Number one, grants are notorious for ending. Is there a plan for what happens after the grant ends?
So the particular grant we're using is actually title money. And so title money is something that this is Title IV money, actually. So we receive Title I, Title II, and Title IV. So Title IV is designated for all students for a well-rounded education. So it's a natural, perfect fit. And so this is money we typically see every year. And again, we are committed to this work. So knowing this is federal money that we're using for this, that we receive, our community receives.
Grace, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. My other question, Laura, about the wording that you were quoting earlier about the, I don't know if it was the job description or the grant. You said the children will see themselves represented in the classroom. Will they also see other types of children and family structures represented? Is that part of the wording?
So I took the wording actually came from the survey that we used, which was a Colorado equity survey that the Agency of Education represented. And I took a little snippet, but the goal is very broad. Grace, yes. That was one of the areas where we saw a great need, is students didn't see themselves in their environments. And so that is part of the work. And then part of that, it's going to be just as Jonathan and both Jim have said, this is a long-term project. So it was initially collecting that data, and now and Jonathan's doing a great job of doing these interviews to collect more personal data and comments and feedback, and then recrafting these. But the curriculum work that's going to happen is a pre-K through, those curriculum teams that we have are pre-K through 12. So there are seats on those groups. And so that is part of the work, is to think about this indicator from the survey and doing a deeper dive into our curriculum standards and then the resources that we're using. And that even goes into how we instruct. So it's bigger than just the standard and the material. And then what does the instruction look like as well?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I got the answer to the question. Is part of the goal to include children and families that are not seen in the classroom? Like if we have classrooms that are full of nothing but white children.
Yes. Mm-hmm. If you mean like including vantage points and perspectives that are beyond the demographic currently represented.
Correct.
Then yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, Grace. I just didn't. Right. I'm sorry, Grace. Yes, Grace. Thanks, Jonathan.
I knew what you were getting at. And I was like, But I was
We
like,
said better.
Not afraid to say it.
We have a hard stop at 1:30. And I do want to welcome Jonathan, and I'm so glad that Laura and Jim, you were able to put this together. It is so great for our community. And I hope it builds on the work that the select board is doing. And I encourage Jonathan to understand what is going on there. I see Sarah here, but they've done a revisioning that really speaks to that too. And from United Counseling Services point of view, we would be actively wanting to be engaged in any type of committee work that might take place. We understand you're just getting it situated, but from UCS's, which is our large mental health agency, Jonathan, and does a variety of services that many of us are part of here. I know that we would be happy to add somebody to that committee if that was helpful at all. And I just have to speak for Sally Sugarman for one moment, because she was so passionate about this work too. And she did interviews with fifth graders because her mantra was that we teach civics in fifth grade. Like, that's it. Fifth grade gets civics. I know, Laura, civics goes through a continuum of learning, but we do know that that particular curriculum piece in the fifth grade is very significant. And she would interview on WBTN students around their view of civics. Fascinating conversations that she had. And so I just felt like she was here in this conversation, and I thought I'd bring her to that because civics is part of our history, right? Too. So just wanted to bring that to the table.
Does anyone else have anything you want to, any quick questions or any quick follow-ups, anything that was mentioned? All right, well, thank you all for coming. This is, and thank you for our guests as well as our speakers. So, Marsh, did you want to finish up with anything?
I was just wanting to thank the three of you who came. This has been really so exciting and encouraging, and whoopee, and keep up the good work.